Before we get into double trouble, Mike, the Vegas win forecast for the Eagles is 9.5 wins. Why are they 6 wins shy of what they're actually going to win?
Yeah, I know that, right? I don't understand this. Best team in the league. Howie Roseman doing a nice job. Look, I actually do think they're in good shape on paper. I think the big question mark is the obvious one, the guy we're going to talk about in a minute, Jalen Hurts. But I have the Eagles based on current roster evaluations, with the easiest projected schedule in the NFL this season. The East just has a light schedule, and the Eagles kind of headline it. So I am on the over here. Not biased. Sometimes I'm under on the Eagles. Sometimes I'm over. I am optimistic this year. I'm at 10.4 wins, so I would take the over on the Eagles.
That's tough. You have them at 10.4, but week one.
I had him at 10.37 for the record.
Like week one, they're definitely going to lose. So I think they're probably more like 9.4 because I think.
What are they playing? A good team like Buffalo or something, or
isn't it? Oh, that's the Lions.
The Lions.
Do you remember they restored the roar?
Did they win a game last year? They tied one. They tied that game. That's what it was. Okay.
I hate you.
They had that tie.
Everything about you as a human is my favorite thing in the world, but in this moment, we are mortal enemies.
Wow.
We're going to need a side bet or something leading
That's
up
right.
to week one.
Yes,
That's going to be fun.
The meanest Daniel Dopp has ever been in his entire life. Let's dive into the Eagles, and we begin with the quarterback. That is, of course, Jalen Hurts, who comes in terms of the consensus ranks at ESPN as quarterback 6. ADP is quarterback 7. Mike has him at 7. I have him at quarterback 6, so slightly more optimistic. This, to me, feels like a fairly straightforward one, is that Jalen Hurts has one of the highest floors of any quarterback in fantasy this season, and I think his ceiling is greater than you might realize. Last year, he led all quarterbacks in rushes, rushing yards, and rushing touchdowns. 2 of those 3 categories are likely to sustain no matter what. It's really easy for us to project him to run the ball a lot and run the football very effectively. Scoring 10 rushing touchdowns for any player, especially a quarterback, is hard to keep up year over year, but the floor is immeasurably high here, Mike. And if this guy just turns the corner a little bit as a passer with much better weapons around him, the passing upside could be good enough that he could challenge to be in that very elite tier of quarterbacks that we talk about as the very, the Mahomes and the Allens and the Lamars and the Herberts and the Bradys.
Yeah, no doubt. QB7 last season, and he was not in the top 20 in pass attempts or passing yards or passing touchdowns. Only had 16 passing touchdowns. I am projecting a bump of about 7 in that department, maybe a slight downgrade in rushing touchdowns this year, to your point. But, my projections love him. I mean, it's hard to knock him down. The problem is this. You say he's a high floor player. On a week-to-week basis, that's exactly right. There's no doubt about it. If you have him and he's starting, you feel good about it. My question is, does he make a leap forward this season and play better, or does he maybe level off or regress and they decide at some point, passing game's not working? Should we give Gardner Minshew a couple starts or something? That's at least, it's more of a risk for him than it is with any other player. And remember, they have a lot of first-round picks next year. They're thinking about, at least they have a fallback plan if they want to go that direction. Maybe they take a look at Minshew during the fantasy playoffs. You know what I mean? If they're underwhelming, that's a risk with him that you do not have with other first-round quarterbacks. That's why I wouldn't put him like 3rd, or 5th, right? That's why I'm knocking him down to like 7th or 8th in my rankings. But again, week to week, you feel great having him.
Yeah, that makes it seem more scary than I was just excited about Jalen Hurts. But I understand all the things that you're saying and the idea that, listen, 22 of his carries came inside the 10-yard line last year. Like, obviously, we're saying can't predict touchdowns, but knowing that they utilize him specifically at the goal line as a runner, if he takes that next step forward at all as a pass catcher, this is Jalen Hurts taking the next step into this echelon.
Here's one last good and bad stat for Jalen Hurts. He had 10 rushing touchdowns last year. 5 of them were on quarterback sneaks. The good side of that is that if they get close, he's going to get an opportunity on some cases.
Yep.
The bad side of that is that 5 touchdowns from basically the 1-yard line and in, that's hard for anybody that's not named like Derrick Henry or Jonathan Taylor to do every single season.
Well, the one positive about this, though, is that it's not like he has a running back that's taking away any kind of rushing volume or touches from him.
By the way, I do have him with 9 projected rushing touchdowns.
Okay.
So 1 off.
Wow. So small regression only. Yeah. I mean, that's, again, really like this player for fantasy. Last season, he had the longest streak amongst quarterbacks to begin the year with at least 20 fantasy points in every game. So if you're looking for a high floor, that's not even a floor. That's like a high... What's like in between a floor and a ceiling? It's a high staircase? I don't know.
Second floor? I don't
Second
know.
Floor. Mike's got a lot of floors in his house. So like...
The middle floor of the mansion on my
Of
property.
the palatial estate. All right, let's keep things moving here, Daniel.
Yeah, I want to talk about Miles Sanders because Miles Sanders was on a podcast earlier this offseason. Was asked how fantasy managers should go about approaching Miles Sanders, and he basically said, well, I wouldn't draft me if the team isn't going to give me the ball in positions to be able to to put me in a spot to score points. And I don't know, with everything that I've seen from Miles Sanders over the last couple of years, fantastic runner. Drafted, top 10 draft pick? Is that true?
Second round pick.
Second round pick. Okay.
Yeah.
So second round pick. But the idea of he's just at this spot where I have no idea what to make of Miles Sanders, and he falls in that dead zone for me where if I get to him and he's one of my starters, I think, again, I've made a mistake.
Yeah. I feel like he's at the end of that tier where I'm like, if I end up, let's say I go, heavy on receivers and he ends up as my RB2, I'm like, you know what? Might be okay, right? I think there's a chance. I'm optimistic for a bounce back, and there's a few reasons here. First of all, to your point, again, yards per carry, don't want to get too caught up in it, right? But top 15 all 3 seasons, right? Out of a sample of 90, 100 running backs, right? Pretty good. Has struggled a little bit the last 2 years in the passing game. But check out how unlucky he was in the touchdown department, right?
How many did he have?
He had 0 touchdowns.
That feels unlucky, yeah.
The Eagles led the NFL in rushing touchdowns. They had 25. Their lead back had 0 touchdowns.
Is that unlucky though?
Yes.
Are you? But like
Yes.
they're designing runs for Jalen Hurts at the goal line. I mean, he has 22 carries. Like that doesn't seem like unlucky. Yeah. That seems like they're designing. They want Jalen Hurts to run the ball.
But that's why we look at expected touchdowns, right? Carries inside the 5, that kind of thing. And he should have had 5, 6 touchdowns based on his usage, right? His expected touchdown total. No, it's just bad luck. He got the carries there. It just didn't convert. It happens. There's bad luck all the time. I mean, you think about Calvin Johnson, Andre Johnson, Julio Jones, some of the best players in the NFL over the past decade, and they have big swings and touchdowns. It happens. It's just the nature of the beast. Would not surprise me at all if he came back and scored 8 touchdowns this year, 9 touchdowns. It wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me either. Talented guy. We'll see on the workload, right? That's the part that I just don't know specifically, right? I mean, they have enough backfield depth. Not like they have one of the top insurance policies at running back, but they have enough guys that have gotten some burn in the past couple of seasons. And last year, maybe in part due to health, he had just 4 games last year with 15 or more touches. He had 5 games with 10 or fewer touches. But maybe we learned something at the end of last season. In the final 2 games that he was healthy, Miles Sanders, 47 total touches and 288 yards. So maybe the committee earlier on in the year was just managing his health and Nick Sirianni finding his groove as a head coach for the first time. But I think like running back 25 right now, and he feels kind of on the money for me.
Yeah.
I don't want him to be my top back. I can live with him as my second back. If I'm going 0 RB strategy, I could see him being the player that I take with my first running back pick.
I think he beats my ranking. I do. I think he beats us out. That's my take. Okay. I'm feeling optimistic. I think he's just too good.
Mike.
And I somewhat disagree. I think you have good backup running backs. I think Sanders is your clear best back, and I think he shows it this year.
Yeah, but that's my take. You disagree with the idea that they have a good backup running back?
I think they're good. They're fine backups.
Yeah, no, they don't have a Nick Chubb or a Jamal Williams a Kareem Hunt or a Jamal Williams or somebody like A.J. Dillon who's like going to share the load evenly with him.
Right. I think they're overrated in terms of being real threats to his lead back job. I think that's noise. I think he'll establish himself as the one, get 15 or so carries, a handful of targets a game, and be a serviceable fantasy starter in RB2.
Do you know who had more carries inside the 10-yard line than Nick Chubb last year?
Daniel Dopp.
Jalen Hurts.
Than Nick Chubb or than Miles Sanders? Than Nick Chubb?
Than Nick Chubb.
Wow.
He had more carries inside the 10-yard line than Nick Chubb.
Yeah.
David Montgomery, Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah.
I'm out on Miles Sanders as a runner because of all the things that they utilize with Jalen Hurts. That's just a me thing, though. I'm excited to see it. Please, I hope I'm wrong.
We'll see. You'll see him week 1.
Please. I am stoked, though, about A.J. Brown. I really want to talk about this because A.J. Brown is one of my favorite wide receivers in the NFL. I think my big question is, with the transition from Tennessee coming over to the Eagles, is there enough with Jalen Hurts under center that he can be viewed as a wide receiver 1 in fantasy drafts this year? Or is there still too many question marks with Jalen Hurts as a passer that he's just not quite there yet?
I'm not sure the last show I've been on of this podcast where I haven't talked about A.J. Brown. So I'm going to let you take the lead on this because I keep repeating the same thing.
So, yeah, I think we've talked about it aplenty. But I think we are in lockstep here. So you guys certainly correct me or disagree if you don't see it this way. But first of all, there are like 15 guys who are capable of being top 10 wide receivers going into the season, right? There are certainly many more that could finish as top 10 wide receivers, but I can make a case for them. There are enough mitigating factors for A.J. Brown to not be inside my top 10 of wide receiver rankings. I have him at wide receiver 14. Those mitigating factors that he plays in one of the run-heaviest offenses in the NFL and a quarterback that we have some question marks as it pertains to his throwing ability in Jalen Hurts. And he actually has like legitimate pieces around him where his target share may not be as gargantuan as it was in Tennessee last year at 27%. Those are the mitigating factors. Here are the factors that work in A.J. Brown's favor. He's freaking awesome, and he's A.J. Brown, and he's super talented. And anytime he has the ball in his hands, he could go 75 yards and score a touchdown. Almost any single play for A.J. Brown. So I have him at 14, and it feels like moving him further down the ranks, like any further down the ranks, would be a really tough thing for me to do. I'd have to be like the world's biggest Giants fan who just hated the Eagles on principle, or have something like maybe a personal vendetta against A.J. Brown. I'm neither of those things. So I have him at wide receiver 14. I can't justify moving him down any further. I could justify moving him up a little bit further, but at what cost? Who are you moving down, right? The first 13 wide receivers on the board are awesome. It's like you're moving him down, or you're moving, like, are you replacing Mike Evans? Are you replacing Keenan Allen? Like, these guys are awesome too. So I like A.J. Brown a ton. You might have to live with like a little bit more up and down than some of the guys that are ahead of him, but he's going to end up at the end of the year being a player you're very happy to have on your roster.
I really quickly want to say, Mike, and I want you to join in here. Field, we talked yesterday when we were doing Double Trouble about how all we want for Terry McLaurin is just to give him opportunities, just put the ball in his hands. And I feel like if somebody would ever just put the ball in A.J. Brown's hands enough, like the dude would dominate, but it's always been a lack of touches. He's just never been out there running enough routes. He's never had enough targets from that standpoint. I'm really hoping that changes here in Philly, Mike. Yeah,
just a low volume offense, and that's going to hurt his ceiling. But again, he's just so good. I mean, this guy is, since he's been in the league, he's top 7 in yards per outrun, yards after the catch, yards per target. Yeah. Like, he's just super efficient, scores a lot of touchdowns. Those are the good things. But does he have that ceiling of the guys you were talking about that are in our top 10? I don't think so. I think it's just too low volume of an offense, much like in Tennessee. And again, he has more competition for targets here. So that's my case for why he's kind of a good, maybe a mid-range wide receiver too. I don't think he'll crack the top 10.
I like that. I've been grabbing A.J. Brown. I feel like when I've been doing drafts, if I go running back, he's a guy that I often have been able to try and find in the 3rd round as my wide receiver 1, assuming I went heavy.
Probably even lower than that, right? Probably in the 4th round with the way.
Yeah, late 3rd, early 4th.
That seems about.
He's fun though. He's a fun guy to have on your team, right? You want some exciting big plays. He catches it, dodges a few guys, breaks some tackles, goes the distance. That you're gonna love him.
All right. So speaking of big plays, like last year, Devonta Smith, right? We had all of this excitement around this rookie coming out of Alabama, what it is they can be in this offense. Yeah. He had 6 targets in 11 of 17 games as a rookie. We all expected that to continue and have a further maturation process this year. And then A.J. Brown gets traded. So how does A.J. Brown, period, just affect the value of Devonta Smith this year in fantasy?
Yeah, it definitely hurts his ceiling a little bit. Same kind of thing, right? There's still how many balls to go around in the passing game, right? It's going, even if they pass the ball more, you're still going to have at least a balanced offense, probably leans towards the run, and you're going to have a scrambling quarterback, and you have other mouths to feed here. So it hurts him a little bit. And also, it's his role, right? He was 8th in average depth of target last season, right? This is a vertical target, which is going to mean low volume naturally. It's going to lead to big plays. But especially in a balanced or run-first offense, it limits your ceiling, especially in PPR. Now, maybe you give him a little bump in non-PPR, but in PPR, does he have a path to getting that big volume that he needs? I don't think so. It's almost like a Mike Evans issue, right? But Mike Evans is with Tom Brady and the second most pass attempts in the NFL and scored all them touchdowns, and it allowed him to still be a top 10 receiver. With Smith, it's not quite the same offense, but it's a similar issue with being that vertical target.
I think here's the path. Is that this is one of the greatest wide receivers we've ever seen at the college level in quite some time. I mean, he won the Heisman Trophy. He won basically every major individual award during his final season at Alabama. The guy has an incredible catch radius. He's good after the catch. He's fast. He has basically all the tools to be a great wide receiver. He just is only 1 year into his NFL career. That would be the path, right? Because I agree with Al Mike is saying in terms of like the structure of the offense and the opportunities that he's going to get as opposed to guys who might have, would you rather have 5 targets way down the field, or would you rather have 10 or 11 that are within 15 yards line of scrimmage? For our purposes, you'd probably prefer the latter here. So that's the path, though, is that like I don't want to lose track of the fact that almost every year there's a breakout player in a second year. I mean, there's actually a lot of them in the NFL. Devonta Smith could be amongst those candidates.
Heck yeah.
I've got him at wide receiver 39, though, so I'm baking in all the realities that Mike suggested.
But this is like literally to your point. How good do we think Devonta Smith is? And he's wide receiver 39 heading into the season. And if you told me at the end of the year he's a top 25 wide receiver easy, I wouldn't shake an eye at that. Like if the right things broke out for him, like that's definitely possible.
Yeah, he was arguably as good as Jalen Waddle last year, and Jalen Waddle was a top 15 fantasy receiver. It was just different circumstances. Yep. This is a numbers game, right? It's PPR. You get a point for a catch. It really doesn't matter how effective you are if you just keep catching the ball, right? So different roles. Waddle, possession guy, helped in PPR. Smith, a downfield weapon in a in a run-heavy offense, didn't have the volume to really get over the top and be a top 15, top 20 wide receiver, whereas Waddle did.
All right, last question here on the Eagles. We've talked about how they're such a run-heavy team, about how, they don't have a ton of balls to be able to go around. And now we've got Dallas Goedert, a tight end, when we've just talked about A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith as the two top pass catchers in an offense that already doesn't have enough passes to go around.
Yeah.
How the heck do you look at Dallas Goedert from a fantasy standpoint? Because is he closer to I could start him as a tight end 8, or is he one of those guys that this is a low volume passing offense and it's not who I would want to be starting at tight end this year?
Yeah, may depend on his target share, right? Because last season, you look at the 9 full games without Zach Ertz, he had a 26% target share, which is like Travis Kelce wishes he got that. You know what I mean? Like that is big time. That's a little over 6 targets per game. He was the number 6 scoring fantasy tight end. And look, he's had 3 straight top 12 fantasy seasons and has never cleared 5 touchdowns. So I think there is room for him to be a mid-range tight end one.
Yeah, I'm a little bit less optimistic because you used 2 numbers there that I think are really important. The good one was that a 26% target share. And what was the average number of targets?
6.1. Right.
6.1.
But for a tight end,
sure. No, I get it. I'm just saying.
Be a tight end 1 with that. Yes.
Yeah. Yes, you can be a tight end 1. But I think people are wondering, like, on talent alone, he's in the same breath or category as guys like Dalton Schultz and TJ Hawkinson, I would argue, that are sort of on that periphery, like not quite the Kittle, Kelsey, Waller, Pitts tier.
Agreed. Yeah.
But also, like, you feel good about them as a starter. On talent, Dallas Goedert is there. I just don't know if the volume is going to stand up just because of the offense, right? And a 6.1 targets per game with a 26% target share. Like, he's a huge part of the game, of the passing game, and yet only 6 targets.
So, target share will go down, but overall pass volume will go up a little bit. I think I don't think they will. Remember, when Goddard was the one, when Ertz was gone, that was when they were extremely run heavy too, which is part of why the target share is so high. It'll be a little bit more balanced. Again, it's still, I think, going to be more of a run-oriented offense, but I still think, and you agree, I mean, we're both at 8.
Yeah,
right? We're both at 8, right? We still agree that he's kind of a mid-range, maybe in a 10-team or more of a back-end tight end 1. I think he's fine, and I think he'll be a high-floor player, too.
I'm also kind of optimistic that passing around the league will be up this year, just because if I were to look at the league at large, it feels like there's a greater distribution of talent than in recent years. Right, like there are a lot of teams in the AFC that think they're a playoff-ready team. How many of them are trying to win with like just defense and running the football? The answer is like probably the Colts, probably the Titans.
The Titans, yeah.
But like other than that, almost maybe the Browns because of Deshaun Watson's suspension. But again, like when you have Deshaun Watson, you don't run the football 50 times a game.
That'll change after week 6.
Yeah, so I think almost every team in the AFC that's in the playoff mix wants to throw it a ton. And in the NFC, there's there are fewer teams that are going to be really, really good this year. But of the ones that are, like, they want to run the football a lot less than they throw the football as well. So I could see passing being up in general in the NFL.